Hey everybody, welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I talk about movies. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Yes, you are.
Indeed.
So, in case you couldn't tell, Evan is not with us tonight. He is he's on holiday. He's taking some time for himself. He had a scheduled vacation, so he's on it. That's
enjoy, Evan.
Yeah, have a good time. We're holding down the fort without him because that's what we decided to do.
We are, and we did.
And so, but that didn't stop us from seeing movies.
No, never.
Yeah, never. But before I get into what's on this episode, I wanted to talk briefly about the Patreon. I can't even talk about it without laughing. Over on the Patreon, we talk about the 1979 sci-fi, not gonna say classic, Disney movie, The Black Hole.
You could say cult classic because it does have a cult following.
This is the world's most boring cult, I think. But that's what's over on the Patreon. I had wanted to see this movie for years because I thought I saw it when I was a kid, and I can't remember if I did. And I talked Megan into it, and so we watched it, and now I owe her $1,000. So,
yes.
But the conversation we had about it is a lot of fun. So if you're a $5 patron or higher, you can hear that immediately. And if you're not one, please consider joining. It would mean a lot to us. And we do a bonus episode each week because of you fine people. And we also have polls, and it's a lot of fun. But on the show this week, we have 3 movies as per usual. We have The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, The Aviary, and FireBird. Two movies referencing birds in the title in 1 week. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
Also
we didn't plan it.
Yeah, didn't plan it. Also could not be more different movies, probably.
No.
But we wanted to talk about The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent first because that is out already, and it's everywhere. I have seen more written about this movie than I have seen many movies in a long time. Here's your IMDb plot summary. In this action-packed comedy, Nicolas Cage plays Nick Cage, channeling his iconic characters as he's caught between superfan Pedro Pascal and CIA agent Tiffany Haddish. Accurate-ish. I mean, is he caught between them? I don't know. The stakes are kind of low.
I guess he's caught between them because he considers Pedro Pascal his friend and doesn't believe he's really a criminal.
Right.
And the FBI is kind of guilting him into helping. So,
right.
Yeah, I guess he's kind of caught.
Yeah, so here's the 10-cent tour. Nicolas Cage is playing, he's probably playing closer version to himself than we think he is. But, yeah, so he's playing Nicolas Cage, and he is, the first thing you see him doing is he's at a lunch, and he's trying to get a part, and he does this really wacko performance in the parking lot for the director, and the director passes on him, and Nicolas Cage's agent Neil Patrick Harris has said to him, hey, there's this guy who wants to pay you $1 million to come to his birthday party in Mallorca, Spain, and just hang out. And Nicolas Cage is like, no, and then he doesn't get the part, and he's like, okay, I'll do it. And so he goes there, and Pedro Pascal is the big fan, and the CIA has got him staked out because they think he's a drug smuggler or a arms dealer? Do you remember what it is?
I thought he was a crime lord.
Some kind of unspecified crime lord. Let's just go with that. So they think he's that, and Nicolas Cage, it turns out, likes Pedro Pascal, and Pedro Pascal is a cool guy, and Tiffany Haddish decides she's going to rope Nicolas Cage into finding all the illegal shit that Pedro Pascal does on this gorgeous compound, I might add. And so that's basically what it is. It's Nicolas Cage trying to find the illegal shit and only basically finding homages to himself all over this home.
Yes. And Pedro Pascal trying to convince Nicolas Cage to star in his movie because he wrote a script.
Right. Star in a screenplay that he wrote. And And what ends up happening is Pedro Pascal is not the crime lord. It's his cousin. And they have some kind of agreement that doesn't really make sense to me, that that the cousin will just be the crime lord and Pedro Pascal can live in this house and kind of be the front somehow. I'm not really sure how it works.
No.
I don't really know that it's all that important ultimately, because what ends up happening is at first it's like this cat and mouse game where Nicolas Cage is working for the CIA and trying to like break into rooms and do all this covert shit, which he sort of does, but he doesn't find anything. And then the cousin finds out that Nicolas Cage is like snooping around, and he tells Pedro Pascal, hey man, you've got to go and kill Nicolas Cage to stop him from doing this. Doesn't he tell him you got to kill Nicolas Cage?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So of course Pedro Pascal can't do it, and they drop acid instead. And and there's a big shootout when the cousin, finds out that Pedro Pascal and Nicolas Cage have teamed up to do something. I don't know, find out what to expose them. I don't even. It's all so muddled. It doesn't really. I mean, the purpose of this movie is not the story. The purpose is just to be silly.
Yes.
I mean, that's really this movie's goal, and it is definitely very silly. Now, whether it's the kind of silly that works for you, I don't know. But I will say that I don't know if it was fine. I didn't ever sit there going like, this is so fucking awful. But I also wasn't like, oh, this is great. It was fun to like watch Nicolas Cage kind of, I think this is going to sound strange, but it's like he's playing a heightened version of himself, but the version that he's playing is trying to dial it back. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And I think that's perfect encapsulation.
And that was really funny to watch, him try not to freak out, basically. I should also mention that he keeps having interactions with his, circa 1983 Valley Girl self, and I think he makes out with himself at one point. I can't remember.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. And the Valley Girl, Nick Cage, is the one, I guess, who for 30 plus years has been giving him horrible career advice.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that's it. I mean, Pedro Pascal's kind of a delight in this.
Kind of. He's a full-on delight, as he always is. I love Pedro Pascal. He's wonderful.
He's really good in drama. He's good in comedy. I cannot wait to see. Well, you know what I can't wait to see.
As Joel in The Last of Us. He's going to be the greatest.
I was just reading an interview where he said that he started the game, but didn't play much of it. He's like, because I realized I can't watch Troy Baker's performance because then I'll just try to impersonate Troy Baker. So he's like, so I haven't played the game. I don't know what happens. Bold choice. Good choice, probably.
It is. Yeah, it's an interesting choice. I feel like I get what he's saying and it's a smart choice in a way, but at the same time, I feel like maybe you should play the game.
Because it's like
at least read
fucking
what happens.
best game of all time.
Right? Exactly. So I get what he's saying, but I'm also like, maybe you should go play it.
But anyway, on the back to the movie. It's I mean, I don't know. I don't. It's okay. There's nothing. Wasn't offended by anything. Nothing made me like laugh out loud. I was just kind of like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay, sure. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I actually feel very similarly. Like there were a couple moments I did laugh heartily, especially in the beginning. Or not the beginning, but at the beginning of when Pedro Pascal and Nicolas Cage get together. And that really is the strength of the film. Their camaraderie, their rapport is just an absolute delight. Like I could have watched them do kind of like a road trip film.
Yeah.
Do a heist film. I could have really watched them do anything. They were so funny and charming together. But anytime the two of them were not together on screen, I didn't care. It was just kind of like, So I really wish the writing had been sharper. I wish the other actors had been as great as the two of them were.
Yeah, Tiffany Haddish has a hard time in this but I think it's because it's kind of a nothing part, you know?
Right. There really isn't much for her. And same with Sharon Horgan, who I really like.
I forgot she was in it. Holy shit. She plays Nicolas Cage's ex-wife.
Yes. And again, it's kind of a nothing role. So there's really not much for her to do. She's doing her best. But yeah, so really when the cousin is over the top and not in a good way, he's just kind of very
dull and predictable.
Yeah, right. It's not an interesting performance or role. So really, I think the strength of the film is the two of them, and that's when in the film is at its most enjoyable and its best. So I liked it too. And I don't normally say this about a film because I never want to like kind of yuck anyone's yum, but I'm kind of surprised at the massive amount of praise this is getting. Like, it's kind of surprising me. And maybe it is just the fact that it's silly. Maybe it is just the fact that Nicolas Cage is always giving 110% in every performance, and Pedro Pascal is just always a delight. Maybe that's why. And yeah, maybe that is enough because they were great. Yeah. They were lovely.
This reminds me though of how we all felt about X, you know? People falling all over themselves to praise that movie, and we're like, what the fuck is so great about this movie? You know?
Yeah, I did like it more, I think, than the rest of us. Yeah. But yes.
Yeah, there were brighter spots in it for you overall.
Yes, I think so. But still, I'm like, I mean, like I said, I enjoyed my time, but really it was just the two of them. I just thought they were so great together. I do think it's interesting that Nicolas Cage turned down this role like 3 or 4 times.
That's funny.
Until the director like wrote him a personal letter and was like, please be in my movie.
Yeah. I also think it's funny that I didn't know that Nicolas Cage doesn't do press, and he has been making the rounds for this movie.
That's right.
Had no idea. So
that's right.
I saw him. I didn't watch it. I saw it on YouTube. I saw him on Kimmel, and I mean, he is an interesting guy. He's much more low key in real life than he's on screen, but you can see where it comes from. You know, you can see how he can go to that Nicolas Cage place.
Yeah. Well, my favorite Nicolas Cage ism ever is an interview he gave where he said, it's not acting, I'm just being, or whatever. Yeah. Like, that is amazing. And that has just always stuck with me, and I love it.
Yeah. I always loved it when Andy Samberg played him on Saturday Night Live, and then they did the thing, of course, where the real Nicolas Cage came and sat along Andy Samberg and did the straight man. So that was fun. But anyway, back to the movie though. It's fine. I didn't find it. It's, you know, I feel like this is one of those things where, you know, 45 days from now, or however long it's been out for about a week. So 38 days from now, when you're on Netflix or Hulu or wherever it is, and you're like, oh, it's that Nicolas Cage movie, and it's kind of rainy and late at night, and you've ordered takeout, that's the movie, you know?
Yeah, it's fun.
Otherwise,
they have a good time.
wouldn't spend a lot of time thinking about it.
No, well, watching them together just made me think I want to see them in more things together, and it just made me think, oh, I should watch this Nicolas Cage movie, and I should watch this Pedro Pascal and this and this and this. So it just really made me want to watch them more, either together or separately. But it's a fun
makes
time.
Me want to watch Face Off again, considering how much they reference Face Off.
Too!
I mean,
Face Off is great. Come on.
Yeah, it is great. Of all the Nicolas Cage movies, though, that they mention, the one that they mention without question the most is Face Off. You know, I walked in John Travolta's shoes. Well, actually, you walked in his face. I think that's like a line or something like that. or I walked in his face. I don't know. Anyway, so do you have anything to add before we move on?
No, just that the two of them were quite a delight together.
Okay, well.
And they should re-team in something else.
Then that is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is an interesting title. I don't know if anybody, I'm assuming that's a reference to the unbearable lightness of being. I don't think anybody will get that, or not many people will get that. That's a movie worth seeing also, by the way. Anyway, moving on. The next movie on our list is The Aviary, which is, it's also a movie.
It is a movie.
Here we go. The poster is so intriguing. Anyway, this, I don't know who wrote this on the summary on IMDb, but I'm guessing it was somebody who loved it because it's long. So here we go. 2 women flee into the New Mexican desert to escape the clutches of an insidious cult. Consumed by fear and paranoia, they can't shake the feeling that they are being followed by its leader, a man as seductive as he is controlling. With their supplies dwindling and their senses starting to fail them, they are faced with a horrifying question. How do you run from an enemy who lives inside your head? That's a lot of information, but it's not wrong.
No, that's pretty spot on for the most part.
So, stars Malin Ackerman and Lorenza, I don't know how to, Izzo, and Chris Messina. And that's basically it, right? Is there really any other cast?
There's just Sandrine Holt in a couple scenes.
Right. That's right. The co-founder of the Aviary. So this is one of those movies that I think has a lot of good ideas that doesn't capitalize on them because you've got these 2 women who are escaping this cult, going through the desert. Of course, they get lost. And yes, they do think that they're being followed, which they are sort of, as it turns out. It's more like they're not being followed, they're being led somewhere, you know?
Yes.
And the whole thing hinges on the idea that Chris Messina, who is a fine actor, but the whole thing hinges on the idea that Chris Messina is so charismatic that he can get inside your head and make you do crazy, weird, evil shit. And I'm just not sure I buy that. And I like Chris Messina. I think I've liked him in everything I've seen him in. There's that horrible Ben Affleck movie that takes place in like the 40s or 50s down in Miami, or maybe it's the 30s.
Oh my God. That movie is
garbage. But like the 22 minutes that Chris Messina's on screen, you're like, this has gone from being a half-star movie to being a 2.5-star movie.
He really saves that movie.
Yeah, he really does. And so, but I think the big mistake this movie makes is we spend too much time lost in the desert, freaking out and becoming paranoid and worrying about our dwindling supplies, and not showing us what it is that makes this cult leader someone that you basically fall in love and will do anything for, you know? I mean, it's just, you see Chris Messina, the movie's about hour and 40 minutes long, and he's maybe in 15 minutes of it, you know? I think Malin Ackerman is a fine actor. I've always liked her, but I always like her too. And the other woman in it, whose name escapes me right now, I think she's
Lorenza.
Yeah, I think she's good too. I've seen her before. I couldn't tell you what I've seen her in. And I think that some of they're really jump scares, are kind of effective, you know, but ultimately for me, it ended up being kind of an you know, I guess I should say what happens. They're going through the desert. They get lost. They're wandering in circles. They're trying to get to this particular town, and they end up like 20 miles away from it in the opposite direction. And so they start off in the correct direction, end up back at this town, and Malin Ackerman keeps having these dreams where Chris Messina is telling her to repeat things over and over. And the movie does this, what I think is not a great choice, because you know immediately that you're in a dream, of like the colors all becoming flashy, kind of like you have a light bright that you're turning on and off. So you always know when someone is dreaming. And the first time that happens, it's kind of effective, but then it happens so many times. You're like, is anything different going to happen? Okay, so you ended up out in the desert in your underwear. Fine. Like everyone sleepwalks eventually, sometime, you know, whatever. The other thing that happens is, of course, and I thought this was kind of corny. The other woman, let's use character names here.
Blair.
Blair. Lorenza is Izzo. She injures her ankle pretty badly, but can somehow get around pretty well, even with that limp. And so they have to spend a lot of time sort of sheltered and letting her rest. And like I said, they have no food and they both think they're going crazy. And then they find this camper RV thing eventually, that they break into, and they get some water and some hot dogs. They start the grill up. And there's this laptop that Blair had stolen. So Malin Ackerman gets it, and she starts looking at all of these recordings that Chris Messina has made of, I guess you would call, they're called boundary sessions, or what are they called? I don't know.
It's
borders.
It's like border therapy or boundary therapy, something like that. Like trying to break through the boundaries of your fear or
right.
something.
And he keeps asking you,
something ridiculous.
What's
like
interfering with your joy today? And in one of the videos, Blair comes in and she's like, well, first you see one between Chris Messina and this other character who we don't see very much, Sandrine Holt. She plays Delilah, who, as it turns out, is his partner in this cult. And I get the impression that she actually thought, or still thought for the longest time, that they were doing good. And then all of a sudden she realized that Chris Messina was evil, partly because he was sleeping with all the women. But, which,
yes.
That's not good if you're, leading a psychological retreat. You're not supposed to sleep with your patients, or clients, whatever word you want to use. And, she's like, I'm going to go to the FBI. And so she leaves and he's like, fuck. And then later, indeterminate amount of time later, Blair comes in, she's wearing a hoodie and she's ready for her session, and Chris Messina is like, what's interfering with your joy? And she's like, I killed Delilah. I stopped her and I whacked her over the head 1,000,000 times and it was awesome. No, she didn't say it was awesome. But she says, I did it to protect you and whatever. And then real Blair walks into the camper and she's like, I didn't want you to find out this way. And then Malin Ackerman starts hallucinating and she sees Chris Messina there at the grill, and she stabs Chris Messina in the neck with this knife that we know she's had all along. It's like not. And then Chris Messina dies, and then she goes to watch more videos, and then she realizes it's she who actually killed Delilah, and she had projected Blair into these videos herself at Chris Messina's brainwashing power. I don't know. And then she goes back outside and she hasn't killed Chris Messina. She's killed Blair. And she's like, no. And then Chris Messina really does show up and he's like, well, hey, you did what you had to do, and you got the laptop and everything's fine, and just get in the car and warm yourself up. And this is one moment that I thought was actually super creepy. She gets in the car to warm up and he's like, I'll be back in a minute. And then he goes back by the camper and he starts digging a hole to put Blair's body in. And I was like, oh, so she really did kill Blair, and this all was mind control. And it seems kind of cheap, but at the same time, I'm not really sure, what you would have done. There's a post-credit sequence, of course, where Chris Messina and Malin Ackerman are doing like a promo for the Aviary, which is the new, psychological whatever it is. And she's all like, yay, the Aviary. She's back in the mix. I don't know. I just kind of felt like, well, what did you think?
I liked it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I would love to know why. I'm going to say this though.
Okay.
I didn't dislike it. That's the thing. It's just kind of like I wish I liked it more. I don't know. So what do you think?
I liked it because I really like the two lead performances. Yeah. I like you. I always like Malin Ackerman. I think she's a really underrated actor. I love Chris Messina. I think he's always superb. And I completely disagree. I don't think that we need to see more of Chris Messina to show how charismatic he is or to show why they are following him as a cult leader. To me, I didn't need that because they're definitely exhibiting signs of being controlled and being coerced and being paranoid and worried and following what he's saying, but trying to do their own thing. So to me, their actions and their behaviors, especially as the film goes on, really is in alignment with other things I have read about abusive relationships, mind control, cults, things like that. So to me, watching just them was enough. And to me, it didn't really hinge on how charismatic he is or not, because that's the thing about abusive men is that oftentimes people might be like, why would you ever follow that person? Or why would you, what do they have? And it's just, they're that manipulative. They're that controlling. They don't have to be the most charismatic. So for me, I just bought into it because of their performances and the signs that they were exhibiting. And and I thought it was really tense. Like when they keep coming back to that town, that abandoned town, Calvary. Yeah, it was so creepy. Like it kind of felt like The Lodge where like she can't escape and she keeps coming back to the same spot. And I was like, what's happening? Are they in a weird time loop? Like, are they losing their minds? What's going on? Was the map toyed with? Like, what is, because they're following the sun. And as Malin Ackerman says, like, you can't move the sun. Like we're following the sun. Yeah. So it's very weird. So for a lot of the film, even though they're dreaming, and I totally get what you're saying about how it's very repetitive and when the dreams are happening. At the same time, I didn't know exactly what was happening. I was like, is one of them betraying the other? Is one of them lying to the other? Are they both so fucked up from all this mind control that they're both kind of deluding themselves? Like what's going on? So for me, it really worked. And I thought, it's a really depressing ending. Yeah. It's really demoralizing and dark, but I really liked it. Mostly for their performances and the tension.
I think that they were really top notch. And I think the thing, which you disagree with me, I think it's because I've seen Chris Messina in so many things, and he always kind of plays the same guy, even though he's one of those, he's really good at it, and I just couldn't get that Chris Messina out of my head. Instead of this kind of slow talking, and you are correct. The things that he does say when you see him on screen are just so clearly manipulative. But in a non-aggressive, I wouldn't say non-threatening, but in a non-aggressive way.
Right. Which is what makes it even creepier and more unsettling.
Yeah.
Because he's the type of person that if somebody were to challenge him and be like, you're being controlling, be like, what are you talking about? We're just having a lovely conversation. I just want what's best for you. Like, so he really nails that in those few scenes that he's in.
Yeah, he definitely has that vibe. I think, this is one of those movies where I think the parts are better than the whole for me, like a lot of it really did work. And especially when they kept going back to the abandoned mission. By the way, when you said The Lodge, did you mean the movie The Lodge or did you mean The Lodge from Twin Peaks?
No, I meant The Lodge.
Okay, I haven't seen that. So, so, your mileage may vary in my opinion, but I think it has a lot of things to recommend it. I just think on the whole, I was kind of like, Well, I think what would have made it work better for me is if it kind of makes sense that Malin Ackerman would be the one who had been manipulated to the point that she didn't even realize she was still carrying out Chris Messina's bidding. I think that what may have worked better for me is if Blair had been the one who was in control the whole time, because she's like the neophyte, right? So,
right.
I don't know. I don't know if that would, I feel like that would have made a difference, but I don't know. I know nothing. That's the short version.
How very Jon Snow.
Do you have any final thoughts for Ye Old Aviary?
Yeah, just this kind of reminded me, not so much in its narrative or execution, but in its themes. It reminded me a lot of the film that also was dealing with cults that I really enjoyed, The Other Lamb, which is another great film, but about creepy male cult leaders. But no, I liked this. I liked their performances. It's a little slow to get going, but I think once it does, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those movies. I won't say don't see it. I mean, I think I would see it more than not see it. But we can talk about that at the end.
All right. Last
movie of the night, we have another Bird title. This one actually, FireBird. I mean, you can't get more birdie than that. So this movie, FireBird follows this is IMDb, FireBird follows a handsome, soulful young soldier who embarks on a clandestine sexual affair with a charismatic fighter pilot on a Soviet Air Force base at the height of 1970s communist rule. That is correct. That lays it out plainly. That is what happens. Why don't you start on this one? I would like to hear what you have to say more than what I have to say.
Oh, okay. I mean, I thought this was okay. I liked it.
Yeah. I think this is another, it's okay. That's what I...
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tragic story. I'm always intrigued to see queer films, particularly historic ones. It's a complaint I've seen time and time again where people, both within the queer community and outside of it, but oftentimes in the queer community, complain about why can't we see more modern stories of queer people? And I completely agree. I just want more queer film in general, modern, historic, you name it. But I also think it's really interesting to show historical time periods with queer characters because it shows that accurately that queer people have always existed and have been everywhere. So that's part of it. Part of it that's why I wanted to see this film. I liked this, and this reminded me a lot of Mophie, which we saw. And because it's dealing with similar themes about masculinity and the military and being gay. And in the case of Sergei, but Roman is not gay. Roman, we're never quite sure, but it certainly seems like he's fluid in his sexuality or possibly bi. But because I kept comparing it to Mophie, I kept thinking of how powerful the film that is. And this didn't have the same emotional resonance for me or power until the very, very end of the film so I'm trying to think of the summary for this. But basically, so Sergei is a private and Roman is a fighter pilot.
And he's an officer.
They meet. Yes, and they meet on a base, and everybody thinks Sergei is in love with his best friend Luisa, but he's not. He's really in love with Roman. And then Roman and Luisa get together, and then they marry. But throughout the years, Roman and Sergei's lives intersect, and they have a relationship. And then Roman moves to Moscow to be with Sergei because after he leaves the military, he becomes an actor. He goes to acting school, drama school, and then he becomes an actor. And then so at the end of the film, there's a letter that's left for him for Sergei. And so he calls to try to get in touch with Roman, and he finds out that Roman was deployed to Afghanistan and died. So then he goes to Luisa, and she's like, they're not going to tell you where his grave is because you're nothing to him and I'm his wife, which is just so cruel and awful. And then Sergei accurately says, he's like, well, I loved him. My feelings for him are the same as what your feelings were, which is very true. They both loved him. And so that scene really moved me. And that scene, I was getting very teary. But that's like it. Like I wasn't really emotionally moved until that scene. And it takes so long to get there. So I thought it was okay, but I wish it had kind of more emotional power. Like I like that Tom Pryor, who co-wrote the film and stars in it.
Oh, he wrote
is an
it?
openly gay actor. Yeah, he co-wrote it. Yeah. I like that he's an openly gay actor. I like that the director is an openly gay director. So that's really great. I think the sex scene between Sergei and Roman is really well done. I love hand shots. Hands intertwining is very, very common for queer films, especially films about queer women, but it's also great to see in films of queer men. I also, this is kind of a minor thing, but maybe not a minor thing, something that I feel like queer people would have in there that a straight director or straight writer or straight actor might not think about. But I like that when they're having sex, they're facing each other, because you don't always see that in sex between queer people. You often see them from, behind or in another position. And I like that they are facing each other. And I'm like, yeah, that's a very intimate position. So I like that. But yeah, so I liked this. I think I liked it conceptually or in theory or in ideas more than in the execution of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I just kind of felt like it was dramatically inert,
Ooh. Yeah, I can see that.
Sort of, it's one of those movies where it's just like, I can see every beat coming. Every single beat coming.
Yeah.
It's so predictable. Which I don't know if that speaks to the quality of the screenplay or the horrible circumstances under which these two men had to live. But the other thing is I did not really care for Tom Pryor's performance. I thought that I was like, not knowing that he wrote it, I'm like, this is what you did with it? Okay. And I thought that I just didn't feel like that they were fleshed out very well. I felt like that they were people-ish, Louisa was just kind of, it's like they're best friends, it's like, but we never see them doing anything together except paperwork and, talking around things,
And swimming that one time in the beginning.
Right. And then like, even, I was thinking at some point, when is somebody going to catch them and they're going to get in trouble with their superior officers? And then that happens, and it's just, it was just a bummer that I saw everything coming. And then, I also, Oleg, I can't pronounce his last name, but the actor who plays Roman, I thought his performance, I liked his performance. And I think that he had the more in air quotes challenging role, because he was, because he was, like you said, maybe he's bi, maybe he's gender fluid, what, we don't know. And the way that he tries to put Sergei off once they're he's discovered, like Roman is accused of having a sexual relationship with an enlisted man, but they don't know who, which I don't know how that you wouldn't know who it was. That's the other thing. It's like, turns out it's Sergei's other friend who wrote that letter, but how do you know that Roman is having an illegal clandestine relationship if you don't see the other person? Did you see them together but couldn't tell who the other person was? How did you know he was an enlisted man? I don't understand any of that. Just in terms of, it's not like he's, like sitting there making out with himself, pretending that he's having a gay relationship, it's like, what did you see,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Louisa wasn't very fleshed out, and she just kind of has the standard sort of like, you betrayed me sort of plot line. And Sergei's just this kind of like, and I don't know if it's the performance or the screenplay or a choice or what, he's just kind of milquetoast and kind of like, he's kind of a dud. So, yeah, it just, I think that the bummer for me was just like how everything was just I don't know if I've seen this story before, told better. It was just, you brought up Mophie, and Mophie is just such a superior movie.
It's such a good movie.
Similar themes, a lot more hardcore in the sense that like it's violent and because there are battle scenes in that, and there's also their drill sergeant in Mophie is just pure evil. And so the kind of like visceral nature of Mophie, I think really, not that that's necessarily what this movie needed, but it probably couldn't hurt, you know? I also kind of get bummed out when filmmakers are telling, you know, love stories about clandestine gay relationships, and everybody's just always punished. You know, it's like, can we have just, you know, a happy gay story once? I mean, for Christ's sake. And I think that you were sort of referencing that, you know, like, why can't we have more modern stories? And presumably more modern stories would have a happier ending, ?
Well, yeah, that too. Why can't we have happy historic endings? Why can't we have modern happy endings? Yeah, no, I think that's a very, very fair criticism, because so often queer people are punished on screen.
And it's just like, I understand why we're seeing this story. It's knowing the struggle is important, but at the same time, seeing the struggle in 90% of the movies, it's a fucking bummer, man. Let's do the happy story. Yeah, you know.
The only thing I will say, the only saving grace and why I didn't have such an issue with it being such a depressing story, is because this is based on a true story. It's based on Sergei's, I think, memoir. So that for me was the only like, well, okay, this actually happened. I mean, of course you can change things and you don't need to tell this story, but then that would be obviously a completely different story. But it's, you know, the thing of it is like, yes, this does happen. Queer people die. Queer people's relationships were thwarted. They still are. But when you're inundated, when those are the only stories being told, or the overwhelming majority, it makes it harder. It's like, can't we see some joy? But
well, you know, this is kind of a strange week for me. One movie that I thought was okay, and another movie I thought was okay, and then another movie I didn't like much. So kind of a bummer for me.
I know, that is a bummer.
Do you have any final thoughts about FireBird?
Yeah, I do think it's kind of interesting that the film is titled after the Russian ballet, and that they saw it together. And so at the end of the film, when Sergei is watching, he's like crying, but also kind of smiles because he's thinking of Roman. And I don't know. It's sad. I also always like a ballet sequence in a film because I love the ballet because it's vibrant and colorful and weird and beautiful. But I just, you know, I kept thinking, and while I was watching it, I was thinking this, and while you were talking, I was thinking about how Sergei is milquetoast, and the performances really are. And I'm wondering, you mentioned earlier about it being a choice, and I'm wondering if that was a choice, like kind of for everybody, to kind of highlight the repression of being a gay person, being a queer person, the repression of being under a Soviet regime. I'm kind of wondering, like, but it did. And if that was a thematic choice, I get it. I get why they chose that. But at the same time, it did keep me craving and yearning for more emotional power and more emotional resonance.
Yeah, that's your.
But overall,
I was just going to say, if that is your choice, it kind of hems you in, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, and also there are performances where we see people being restrained, but you can see the passion or the fury under the surface, and we don't really see that. Yeah. So I wish we could have seen more of that. But I did like this. I certainly liked it more than you. But I definitely wish we had more emotional power.
I was the thing, we were talking about this off mic, and I was hoping that I would remember it, and I just did. This movie has my least favorite thing about movies that Okay, so this is, they're in Estonia, right? Isn't that where the base is?
Yes.
They're in Estonia.
Yes.
Some of them are Russian. Some of them are probably Estonian. Some of them are probably from other parts of the Soviet Union, whatever. But they're speaking English with Eastern European accents. And I hate that. I either do the movie in Russian or do it in whatever the actor's real life accent is. Do that. People think Dangerous Liaisons is weird because everybody speaks with their own accent. And I think that that's a perfect choice because, I mean, look at it. It's France in the 18th century. It could be nothing else, So,
yeah.
I just always think to myself, it's like, if they were just whatever, it doesn't need, I don't know. I don't need to get into it.
That did not bother me, but I understand. Yeah. It's a fair criticism. I definitely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's not like you're Meryl Streep in Bridges of Madison County where you're actually Italian. I mean, come on, so.
I mean, well, when you're Meryl Streep, you could do any accent. She's so amazing. Amazing.
Well, wow. Okay, so let's recap. Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is out in theaters now. I think for me, it's a kind of see it, but your mileage will vary.
Yeah, I would say see it because Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal are so lovely together.
The Aviary, it's hard for me to recommend that one. But it's hard for me to say, fuck it. I mean, it's like, it really is such like a 2.5 out of 4 stars for me, And this movie is coming out in theaters and I think also on demand, although don't quote me on the on demand part. What about you? It sounds like you liked it a lot more than I did.
Yeah, I did like it, so I would recommend it.
And finally, FireBird, I that's coming out in theaters. I cannot recommend FireBird.
That is fair.
But you can.
I can and I will. It's far from a perfect film, but I do think there are enough compelling reasons to make you watch. But I understand the criticisms and I do wish this had more in it.
You can't win them all. A lot of split tickets tonight. Wow.
I know.
Oh, well. Okay. So, I guess that wraps up this episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. Wow.
Yes. So.
So we just told you where all the movies are playing. So you can see them if you like and not see them if you don't like. Hey. But before I get into all the other outro stuff, the first thing I want to do is say thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you for doing all the heavy lifting for us and making me sound better than I really do.
Thank you, Otto. We love you.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. If you want to look us up on the internet, our website is spoilerpiece.com. On social media, we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please send us an email, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Tell me why FireBird is better than Mophie. I mean, that would require that you saw Mophie too, which I don't know how many people have seen that, but whatever.
But they should, because
this really is great. But if you don't want to send an email, if you want to do something else, you could give us a call.
At 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail. Let us know what you thought of this episode, any episode. Let us know what you thought of The Black Hole if you're a patron. If you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. You can also rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out a lot. And if you really, really like the show, please join the aforementioned Patreon. Remember, we talked about the 1979 Disney cult classic ? The Black Hole. And that's it. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies and I talk about movies, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Dave Sees Movies.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
Yep, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.